Hi, Nora. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you today?
Good, good, good. Well, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to come on live with me. I think you have a very interesting story. I think when we got connected on LinkedIn, I was like, wow, I love your story. So I gotta have you on my live stream. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. You have definitely made a lot of waves in LinkedIn. You have made a great name for yourself. I've always been impressed with the number of people who attend all your sessions and the amount of engagement that you always get on LinkedIn. So you're definitely doing lots of things right, and you and I see eye to eye about many things financial. So I think this is going to be fun for us to chat today.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself? I know you call yourself professional hobo. So what does hobo means for those who doesn't know? And then just tell us where, just a little bit more about yourself.
All right. Well, sounds like a good place to start. The professional hobo was a name that I ended up. It was a way that I initially was making fun of myself when I called myself the professional hobo. What happened is in 2006, I sold everything I owned, and that includes a busy financial planning practice in Toronto, Canada.
Mm,
And my goal was to be able to travel the world uninhibited for as long as I wanted, and with the ultimate goal of really intense, immersive cultural exploration. The
mhm,
only thing is so I was homeless, and a hobo really is a kind of a term for a homeless person. So as I was traveling the world and I would meet people along the way, one of the first, what's that first cocktail party question that people ask when they're getting to know you? What do you do?
mhm.
And I hadn't yet developed my career as a freelance writer and
Yeah,
travel
yeah, yeah,
blogger, and
yeah,
and I was just homeless. I didn't do anything, so I really
yeah,
felt a
yeah,
little bit out of place. It was a fish out of water. So I thought, okay, how can I like sound
yeah,
professional while really just admitting that I'm homeless?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I said
yeah.
I'm a
Okay.
professional hobo, and yeah, it stuck.
What kind of looks are you getting when you're saying that?
I mean, people would laugh. I did it for the laugh, and I got it every
I love
time.
it. I love it. Yeah,
So
I would have
yeah.
done the same thing. I said, I'm a professional homeless person. I just, just kidding.
Exactly. Who knew that
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
turn it like who knew that 14 years later it would turn into like an entire brand, but
Mhm,
that's another story. And in fact, actually there was more poetry to it in that
mhm,
as I was traveling full time over the next 12 years, I curated and further developed a really intense, passionate love of international train travel, like long
mm,
distance train travel. And
mhm,
the origins of the word hobo actually go
mhm,
back to the 1930s, when
mhm,
the migrant workers would take a train. They were also proverbially homeless, and they would take a train to a
mhm,
destination. They get off, they'd look for work, and then when work dried off, they get back on a train and go to another destination. So in a
mhm,
poetic way, that's kind of what I was doing as well.
mhm. Someone mentioned nomad. Is that another word for nomad, or is this different?
Yeah, a nomad is
Mhm.
definitely another way of describing my lifestyle for sure.
Yep, yep. I love it. I've always like wanted to do your lifestyle, but I have two dogs, so I kind of settle in Vegas for now because I need a place for the dogs and then just go on vacation. So anyway, maybe later. So okay, so you told us like so in 2006 you quit your job. Like wow, so you were how long were you doing how long were you a CFP for? So you're a CFP practicing in Canada.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, tell us more like what clicked for you like one day you just you're done with whatever you were doing. So you pretty much gave up your practice to just do this in 2006 or did you save money? Like how did you plan for that? What was the process, before you finally quit your practice in 2006?
Great question. And certainly, I thank you for bringing in the financial part as well, because one of the common misconceptions about any digital nomad or anybody who travels as a lifestyle, I think there's a misconception that they're either proverbially broke or they're a trust child, a trust fund child. And I was neither,
Yeah.
but neither was I. When I sold my financial planning practice, it kicked
Mhm.
out an income. So the money that I got from the sale of my practice kicked out a
Mhm.
small income of about 1,500 US dollars a month for 2 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that allowed me to start to dip my toe into the world of lifestyle travel without dipping into my
Mm.
savings. So I
Wow.
learned to live on much less. And actually, I discovered along the way that, in fact, actually, full time travel has consistently cost me way less than it ever cost me to live in one place.
Wow.
And that's for a variety of reasons, from fixed
Mhm.
expenses to when we have a house or an apartment, then suddenly we have the ability to fill it. So we do spend some more money on stuff than you would if
Mhm.
everything you own fit into a bag. But there's also a
Mhm.
certain consumerist lifestyle to keep up with, and a lot of fixed
Mhm.
expenses that you just don't have on the road.
Mhm.
So I never touched any of the, and also too, I was 30 years old when I sold everything to travel. So I'd
Mhm.
had a good decade and change in the workforce before I left to travel. And because I was a financial
Mhm.
planner, as you can imagine, I saved and invested lots of
Mhm.
money,
Good.
as you should do if you're a financial planner.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so ultimately, what that did, and what that allowed me to do, is I basically took care of my financial future, as in my retirement,
Mhm.
early on in my life with the magic of
Mhm.
compounding. Because I had
Mhm.
been saving and investing from the time I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of money at 30, but I knew that that money, when I was in my 60s, would be enough. It would have compounded and grown enough that it could take care of me when I should reach a time when I would be unwilling or unable to work.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
then what that allowed me to do is it gave me the freedom to live with the money that I could make.
Mhm.
So I could definitely go deeper into how I structured my finances and my financial plan for
Mhm.
traveling the world. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I did learn how to travel full time in a financially sustainable way. And
Mhm.
that's what I teach people to do on my website.
Okay. So basically, you said you sold your practice. So the practice was giving you 1,500 a month. You said for like a year when you sold it.
The income from the sale of my
Yeah.
practice,
Mhm.
that was 2 years.
Yeah. Oh, you said the 1,500 for 2 years. It was giving you income. Okay. So tell us, like, when you quit your 2000 in 2006. So where did you go first? Like how was that the first year living like a nomad? Like how So I'm just curious. So, okay, you sold everything. You were homeless. So I guess you're living on a backpack. So where did you go first? Like where did you live for the first year?
One of the things that I learned very early on is that if you listen carefully, your destinations will choose you. And
Mm.
so I didn't initially know where I would go or what I would do or how I would make money or how long I would even last in this lifestyle. It was really a
Mhm.
shot in the dark. I just kind of knew I had to go. Uh,
Mhm.
my idea was that I would go to Costa Rica and I would take a course offered by Outward Bound that would certify me to
Mhm.
be an outdoor education instructor. Because I thought, well, that's a skill that I could that could take me around the world, and I could,
Mhm.
do have some rewarding work. But for
Mhm.
whatever reason, every time I was looking at flights, I got click paralysis. Like I just could not bring myself to book the ticket. Uh,
Mhm.
and then my partner at the time, his brother called, uh,
Mhm.
and he lived in Western Canada. And
Mhm.
his brother said, "I'm getting married. Will you be in the wedding party?"
Mhm.
And that would have actually had we been in Costa Rica, that would have been a problem. So, in fact, actually, the fact that I couldn't bring myself to click by was a good thing, because what we did was we took the train across Canada, we went
Mhm.
west, and then we went all
Mhm.
around, and then we stayed in the Rocky Mountains for about 7 months.
Mhm.
And then from there, again, didn't know where we were going to go next, but I was researching what eventually became an entire lifestyle for me of getting free accommodation around the world. And I was researching this website that called the Caretaker's Gazette, and it had
Mhm.
this opportunity to volunteer and trade for free accommodation in Hawaii that I was just fascinated by.
Mhm.
And that was it. That was the next step. So
Mhm.
we spent 6 months in Hawaii, and then another and another and another opportunity came. So basically, I
Mhm.
allowed my destinations to choose me through most of my travel career. I have allowed
Wow.
my destinations to
Yeah.
choose me in the form of a unique opportunity.
Mhm.
Some really good reason to go to that place, be a house
Mhm.
sitting gig, visit a friend. There was always some good reason to go there, and then I just let my
Mhm.
trip evolve from there.
Got it. Cool. So basically you were so okay, so like were you like doing anything to make money during that time? Because you quit your career. So I guess like you weren't doing any more financial planning after that, right? So you were kind of, you're living off the 1,500 a month, and then I guess finding work like house sitting. Oh, okay, free housing, and then like so you were living pretty much off the $1,500 a month, right? And just enjoying life for the first couple of years. And then when did you like start to like make money?
Okay, so it was a couple of months into my travel lifestyle that I realized. By that point, I already had a travel blog, but the
Got it.
2006 was the pioneer days of travel blogging. In that
Mhm.
those travel blogs were not businesses back then; they were online journals, and that's exactly what mine was. It was just a
Got
way
it.
for me to write
Yep,
about
yep.
my travels.
Yeah.
But I also realized I really enjoyed writing about my travels, and I also knew I was pretty good at it.
Mm.
So a couple of months into my travel career, I kind of a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, "Hey, wait a minute! With a laptop and an internet connection and a talent for writing,
Yeah.
I could earn a living as a freelance writer."
Oh.
So my
Mhm.
mission in the beginning was to develop a career as a freelance writer, and
Mhm.
I gave myself that 2 years because it takes a lot of time to build up a portfolio and a reputation
Mhm.
and get
Yep,
gigs
yep.
going as a freelance
Yeah.
writer. So I had the luxury of
Mhm.
the income that was coming in from the sale of my
Mhm.
practice
Mhm.
to allow me the time to build up a freelance writing practice that would eventually replace and surpass the
Mhm.
money I was making from the sale of my practice. And the magic happened regarding my freelance writing career because, as a former CFP, I found travel publications would hire me to write about finance because you need money
Mhm.
to travel. And
Mhm.
finance publications would hire me to write about travel because
Mhm.
you need money to travel. So I became the finance of travel girl.
Got it. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I kind of was able to carve out a niche.
Yeah.
Then I and achieve great success fairly quickly that might not have been possible if I was just pitching to National Geographic as some
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Okay. So you were saying, okay, so you were saying there's a difference between a financially sustainable travel and budget travel. So you pretty much said that you save more money just traveling versus staying one place, because I guess you were mostly doing like the house sitting and stuff like that. So you're getting it, you're staying at the place for free pretty much, right? For most of the places you were at.
Yeah. So your question is about the difference between financially sustainable travel and budget travel. So
Hmm.
I'll address that, and then we can talk about the free accommodation as a vehicle thereof. Um, so budget travel obviously is trying to travel as inexpensively as possible. Full stop. Financially sustainable travel is based on three pillars. It's based
Hmm.
on how much money are you earning while you're so earning money remotely,
Hmm.
and then how do you choose to spend that money? So spending it wisely, and
Hmm.
then balancing those two aspects to travel for as long as you want in order to do it in a sustainable way. So
Hmm.
I know digital nomads, full-time travelers who earn seven figures a year. So that's not budget travel. They're traveling very well all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I also know digital nomads who earn $6,000 a year. So it all depends on how much you're making and how you're choosing to spend that money. And it's about being able to balance those two aspects. So that's why I
Hmm.
say it's not budget travel. It's about the act of managing your lifestyle and finances around travel.
Hmm.
Now, in the early days, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was living on a fixed income, and I had to learn how to travel creatively. Now,
Hmm.
I call myself um, I have champagne tastes and a beer drinker's budget. So, so I like the finer things in life.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I can't, slum it if I need to, and I've definitely done a lot of very budget things. But what
Mhm.
I discovered is free accommodation. And I ended up writing a whole book about this because I saved over $100,000 in free accommodation throughout my 12 years of full-time travel. And
Mhm.
in so doing, I wasn't slumming it. I was staying in places that I would never have been able to afford, even if I had a team of people helping
Mhm.
to pay for it with me. Beautiful houses, through
Mhm.
house sitting, through volunteering. I lived on boats in the Caribbean for 3 months. Uh,
Wow.
I've done hospitality exchanges.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
only form of free accommodation I haven't done is a home exchange because I didn't have a home to
Mhm.
exchange. But I do
Mm.
cover all of that in my book, How to Get Free Accommodation Around the World.
Wow, very cool. So, okay, so tell us more about that. How did you save $100,000 of accommodation during that 12 years on the road?
So this was not only a way to save money, but it was also the way that I it provided me with some of the most rewarding cultural experiences I could have imagined. And it also helped me to learn to live around the world rather than merely travel through it or
Mm.
pass through it. So the first form of free accommodation that I found was this gig in Hawaii that I alluded to earlier, which
Mhm.
was I was volunteering in trade for free accommodation. I had my own yurt on a
Mhm.
volcanic cliff on the big island of
Mhm.
Hawaii, and I was milking goats in trade for free accommodation. It was a very bizarre gig.
Where was that?
In Hawaii on the big island.
Wow, milking goat.
I was,
Okay.
yeah, I was,
Oh
and
god.
it was such an
Uh-huh.
abrupt transition. I kept thinking, wow, 6 months ago, I was like living a very different life in Toronto, and here I am milking
Uh,
goats. This is kind of weird,
yeah.
but it was also great. And I also I did all kinds of. I mean, when people think of work trade or volunteering in trade for accommodation, they think of woofing. That's this website called woofing, WWOOF, Worldwide
Mm.
Work on Organic Farms.
Oh, okay.
Now, that is
Mm.
actually only one of many different websites and resources that will hook you up with
Mhm.
work trade gigs. My thumbs are not green. I'm not good with organic farming. It's not my deal. The milking goats
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
closest thing to that kind of lifestyle that I ever got. The rest of the
Yeah.
time I designed marketing plans and trade for free accommodation. I painted murals. I led eco treks on llamas. I managed properties. I taught at retreat centers. Like I did all these kind of really bizarre and fantastical things in trade for free accommodation. So
Mhm.
the possibilities are as wide as your imagination with regards to
Wow.
things you can do.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I did find though that trying to manage an online business concurrent to volunteering became really onerous. So I
Mm.
had a lot of it, it was like if you're volunteering 20 hours a week and you're working another 30, 40 hours a week on your business, suddenly it feels like the rat race. It's like, well, why am I on
Mhm.
the other side of the world if I can't actually enjoy
Mhm.
it? And that was
Yeah.
when I discovered house sitting, which
Mm.
was is to this day my favorite form of free accommodation. You get a
Mhm.
slice of home. It's just somebody else's home
Mhm.
and you take care of it in their absence. And it's a way again to experience a very local slice of life. You're plugged into a local community. You meet neighbors. You're really. I was really. I really could feel like months later that I had actually just for a little time experienced what it was like to live in
Mhm.
these places around the world, which is really what my whole dream of travel was about anyway. So
Wow.
it was a great fit.
Yeah. So a friend of mine was actually talking about the house sitting. So so you can find house places to stay all over the world, pretty much.
Yep. All over the world. The gigs can be 3 days, 3 months, or even 3 years long.
Yeah.
There's so many different gigs, and there's a lot of different websites that will hook you up with
Mm.
that. So, one of the things, just shameless plug here, one of the things in the latest edition of my book that I do is I break down all the different resources that are available to you to find these kinds of gigs.
Mhm.
And I, so this website is really good for Australia and New Zealand. This website
Mm.
is really good for these people or these places. And that way I take the legwork out. So basically, if you want to go to a certain part of the world or experience a certain type of free
Mhm.
accommodation gig, I'll
Got it.
send you right to the right place to find those opportunities.
Wow. Okay. So, I guess have you ever been in a place where you can find a house in between? So because you have to do some sort of planning, right? Like, what if like you book a 2 months house and then they just cancel on you and said, "Oh yeah, our vacation plan changed." So then I guess you're stuck with no home. Like, have you ever had that happen to you, or you have to find a hotel or whatever motel right away because the owners are coming back?
I've never been left in the lurch like that. It's the gigs avoid me the gigs. Although
Mhm.
I did have, so I was based in Grenada in the Caribbean, and I had a house sitting gig lined up in Panama.
Mhm.
And it was still the gig was still a few months out, but I got into a near fatal accident. It was
Oh.
my partner at the time and we had got into a terrible accident, and so we were both my partner at the time, even more so than I, really terribly badly physically injured, such that we
Oh.
weren't going to be able to do the gigs. So that was an example of us not being able to fulfill that responsibility, but we were able to give the homeowners plenty of notice for that. But I've never been
Mhm.
left in the lurch. Uh,
Mhm.
but I haven't always, it wasn't like every single day of every year I had a free accommodation gig lined up. I often had periods in between gigs where I would either stay with friends or in hostels or hotels,
Mhm.
or I would rent an apartment. So one of the things
Mm.
I learned towards the end of my 12 years of full-time travel, I still travel about half of every year, and
Mhm.
and so towards the end of my full-time travel, and now, generally my preference is to rent a furnished place and on a month-to-month basis.
Mhm.
And there's a whole technique that you can use to find a place. On the ground. So you don't. I don't use Airbnb for a variety of reasons. I won't bore you with, but
Mm.
I know I actually find the places to rent at the destination, and I pay a fraction of what you would pay if you were looking for an apartment online.
Oh, okay.
So you can
Yeah.
definitely save a lot of money, but still have a beautiful furnished apartment in the destination that you want to visit.
So there's specific websites for that to find the furnished apartments. Or you just
Yeah,
have to kind of know how to find them. I assume these are all
yeah.
talk
There's
about
a
in your book.
system.
Okay.
There's a
Okay.
system, and I
All right.
talk about it on my website as well.
A website or your book?
No, on my website. So
Okay. But
that's
you
a separate matter because that's paying for accommodation. So I have an article on my website about how to find an apartment in Chiang Mai, but the techniques
Mhm.
that I outlined in that article can apply to just
Got it.
about anywhere in the world.
Okay. So let's say someone wants to just quit their job or whatever. They're like, okay, I'm tired of corporate world, and then so what would you suggest to them? Like, what would be their first step to be able to start this lifestyle, nomadic lifestyle, be a professional hobo, pretty much, and then still be able to survive and not go broke, and then so yeah, what would you advise these people?
All right. So my first and foremost piece of advice is don't do what I do, or don't do what I did. And
Yeah.
don't because I just sold everything and just hit the road, right? That was it. I didn't know
Yeah,
what I'd
you're
do or how I would do it.
that was very adventurous.
Well, it was adventurous, but also it was a different time in that
Mhm.
I certainly wasn't the only person to be doing it, but I was certainly the first
Mhm.
in what would become an emerging trend of people who travel full time and work
Mhm.
with remote online careers. Um, but there were no websites teaching you how to do it. There were no tools and techniques. I mean, these days there's all kinds of ways that you can
Yeah.
learn through the
Yeah.
mistakes that people like me have made how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So my real first piece of advice is get the foundations of your online business or career in place before you
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
Because when you start traveling as a lifestyle, it is a very energetically and logistically time consuming thing. Learning how to travel as a lifestyle, learning how to travel full time, constantly being in a foreign environment and
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to even survive literally, like where do I shop, how do I eat, where do I
Yeah. Yeah.
everything is
Yeah. Yeah.
when everything is different, it takes a lot of energy just to do that. Now
Yeah.
imagine concurrently trying to build an online business. It's I constantly sacrificed one or the other. I was either sacrificing a
Yeah.
business opportunity or I was sacrificing a travel experience. So
Yeah.
get the foundations of your online business going first and get your financial
Mhm.
house in order. Pay off all your debts, make sure that you
Yeah.
are solvent and that you
Mhm.
have emergency funds and whatnot before you even hit the road.
Got it. Yeah, that must be very draining because you have to be constantly energetic and then constantly have this energy to figure all that stuff out, right? And then plus, like, it's not like you're settled; you're like in a new territory. So it's like I don't know how long you stay in one place. So let's say six. If it's 6 months, then at least that gives you time to actually relax, adjust first. But if you're moving every month, then you're like constantly like, okay, new place, new things.
Yeah.
Like you have to like pretty much it's like you just can't just relax, so you kind of have to be at the prime of your life to actually want to do this and really really want to do this. So for you, like how long do you usually stay in one city or one place before you move around? Was it like 1 month or like 2 months, 3 months? Because like it can get draining depending on how how much time you stay in one place.
So I tried it a lot of different ways. I have set up bases, like a little. I would set up like an informal home base somewhere that I would
Mhm.
stay and that I would travel from. I would make trips from
Ah,
there.
got it.
So I,
Got it.
I had a few different home bases. One in Australia, one in New Zealand, one in Grenada, one in
Mhm.
Peru, and kind of one in Ecuador. So those are the places that I stayed the longest,
Mhm.
and those each of those places were anything from 6 months to 2 years.
Mhm.
Um, the moving around in between varied very much. I think that when we think of it, like I certainly initially thought, oh, well, 1 month in a place, move around every month, that would be fine. But like you
Mhm.
said, that's incredibly draining. It's actually not slow enough. So for me, I love slow travel. So an
Yep. Yep.
ideal amount of time for me to stay in a destination would be 3 months,
Yep.
because
Yep.
that would be enough time for me to arrive,
Yeah.
sink into it, learn the pace
Yep.
of life, make
Yep.
some social connections, and then also figure out where I'm going to go next and make the
Yep. Yep.
preparations to go to the next
Mhm.
place. So that's
Mhm.
that's kind of the sweet spot for me. But I
Mhm.
mean, I did well in 2010. I went so fast and so hard. I was the longest I stayed anywhere that whole year was 2.5 weeks. And on average, I was changing beds every 5 days.
Wow.
And that was a whole year. And that was also a year where
Mhm.
all but 3 days I had free
Yeah.
accommodation every single day that year. Like it was insane,
Wow.
but it took a toll. I mean, I had to spend the next 6 months in a near comatose state recovering from that,
Oh.
from really intense travel fatigue. So I always say to someone who's looking at getting to the lifestyle, you'll figure out your own rhythm the
Yeah.
best.
Yep. Mhm.
Try it all,
Mhm.
and if it doesn't fit, try something else.
Yep. Yep.
There are no rules. You can travel for as long, as fast and as
Mhm.
slow as you want. You can
Mhm.
do whatever you want, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Got it. So you talk about social connections. So tell us, like, was it hard to make friends? Like, because you're always constantly traveling. I mean, like, if you do virtual, which with COVID now, we might have to, manage our friendship virtually. So at the time, pre-COVID, like, how did you make friends? Like, was it pretty easy? Because like if you're in a touristy area, like, probably it's probably easier, right? So like, yeah, how was it like to make friends and nurture that friendships when you're always traveling?
It really varied. It depended on where I was and what I was doing when I was there. One of the things that I can say in favor of work exchange opportunities, volunteering and trade for free accommodation, is more often than not, you are immediately going to be plugged into a community, because usually you're not the only volunteer there. So you're going to meet other
Yep.
people from around the world who are also volunteering. So you're
Yep.
going to be living and working with these people. So you will get to know
Mhm.
them. You're also going to be living with or near to your hosts, so that
Mhm.
the people who are your bosses,
Mhm.
they're locals, right? So
Mhm.
then immediately you have the ability to tap into the expertise and also the social circles and knowledge
Mhm.
like it's like a ready-made
Mhm.
immersive travel experience unto itself. So
Yep.
I made many lifelong friends that way.
Oh.
um, Even in house sitting, often the house sitters, the homeowners themselves obviously are
Mm.
going away. That's why I'm
Yeah.
taking care of their homes.
Yeah.
But they would often introduce me to their neighbors, and
Oh,
I would
okay.
I would meet other people while I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there.
Mhm.
Also, too, and this is definitely applicable now and going forward. There are really thriving online communities that not only allow you to connect with people online, but then you can take those connections offline. So there are digital nomad Facebook groups for most destinations.
Yep,
If
yep.
you join that Facebook group, then you're going to find out
Mhm.
who else is staying in your destination, and so
Yep,
then you
yep,
can meet in person.
yep.
So there's a lot of different ways to meet people. And then also, too, if you want to just meet locals,
Mhm.
take a look at what your common interests are. So if you like rock climbing, then go on to, meetup.com or whatever, find a rock climbing group at your destination and
Yep,
attend their meeting.
yep.
And that way you're going to meet a bunch of locals who you wouldn't otherwise meet any other way. And you'll be
Mhm.
able to meet and bond through the
Mhm.
connection of a shared interest.
Got it. So the exchange program that you're talking about, like, do you talk about that in the book or on your website? So if people need some guidance into how to find those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all in the book.
Okay. What's the name of your book again?
How to get free accommodation around the world.
Okay. Is that your only book, or you're gonna write more books as well?
Well, I also have another
Mhm.
book called Tales of Trains, where the journey
Mhm.
is the destination. And that is
Okay.
not a how to book. It's just about all of the very, very crazy train journeys that I've done around the world.
All
And yeah,
right.
crazy. Like a
Okay.
teaser, an example there is
Yeah.
I rode
Yeah.
11,000 kilometers of trains in Australia in 11 days straight
Okay.
to see if it's possible to get bored on a train.
Awesome. I'll
So
have to check. I'll have to check out your book then. So you said you were doing this for 12 years, so it's already, so the last 2 years you weren't really a full-time traveler anymore, right? Because you quit.
no,
You said you quit. Okay. So why did you stop? Like, were you just tired of doing full-time traveling that you felt like you need to settle now? Are you living in a home now? Like, what's your lifestyle now?
So I believe that full-time travel, as in without any kind of home or home base, has a shelf life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's most people, most of my colleagues who started
Yeah.
around the time that I did, uh, dropped out around 10 years. Something happens around the 10-year mark. You just kind of get to a point where it's like you need a place to call your own.
Mm,
So I lasted 12. And I think the reason I lasted longer than 10 years is because I had some longer term home bases along the way.
mhm.
But the difference was they were never really mine. They were never really my places. And in almost
Yeah.
every instance, the place kind of was,
Mhm.
it had an expiry date, shall we say.
Mm,
So I realized a few things that I really wanted a place that I could call my own, that I could be mine for as long as I wanted it.
mhm.
And I wanted to return to my home country of Canada to just kind of relax a little bit into the shared cultural context, shared linguistic
Mhm.
commonalities. Like it's a lot easier. It's really a lot easier to be in your home country or in familiar territory similar to your home country,
Mhm.
that would allow me to just unpack, unwind, enjoy my space, and then I
Mhm.
could travel from here. So I still travel about 6 months of every year,
Mhm.
cumulatively,
Okay.
pandemics notwithstanding.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have my home base here. And also too, the last reason why I decided to get a home base is my parents aren't getting any younger, and I wanted to be able to have a place that was close to them so that I could
Mm,
be here for
yeah.
them in any
Yeah.
time of need.
Yeah. It seems like either like the nomads that I know is like it's either they quit doing that when they want to start a family or they've met someone. They're like, okay, we gotta kind of settle because I guess it's hard with kids to carry with you, like as a nomad. Or have you met people with kids and still? Oh, what about the dogs? Have you seen nomads with dogs?
Gigi Griffiths. Yep.
Wait,
The
wait,
I
okay.
forgot what her site is, the Rambler or something. She travels with the dog.
You-
I know
Okay.
families. I know one family, the
Mm-hmm.
Dennings, they have
Yeah.
7 children and
Uh-huh.
they've been traveling full time as long as I have. And
Wow.
there are single moms with kids, there are families with gaggles of children, there's people with pets, there really is.
Oh.
When I said earlier that there are no rules, I meant it. There's as many ways, there are as many ways to travel the world as there are people in it, and it's up to you to carve out your style, and decide
Mhm.
how you want to do it. The families that travel the world, of course, need to homeschool their children unless they stay somewhere long enough that they want to put their children into the public school system for a term,
Mhm.
which in some cases is possible. Some families, when their children reach adolescence, and somewhere around the 14, 15-year-old mark,
Mhm.
some families choose to return home or set up a proper home base so the children can socialize a little more, so they can have a little more of a stable social life, as opposed to an ever-changing one. But
Mhm.
yeah, there are no rules. You don't need to stop to have kids, or you don't need
Wow.
to not start because you have kids.
Okay,
If you
so
want to do it badly enough, it's possible.
the one with the dog, this is a GJ Griffiths. Okay, I gotta
Yes.
connect with them. You gotta send me their website information. So how do you travel with dogs? You always fly the dogs in the cargo?
I guess it depends on the dog. I mean, I think her dog is
Oh,
small enough that she can put it under the
oh,
seat.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, there's
Mine's
there's
not.
a lot of material online that teaches you how to
Awesome.
travel with pets.
Oh, okay. I gotta read more about that. Maybe that might be my next step after Vegas. All
There
right.
you
So
go.
okay. So how does all this experience that you're doing now actually be relevant after the pandemic?
So there something has shifted with the pandemic. Many
Mm,
things have
yep.
shifted with the pandemic. But one of the things that happened, of course, was when the world was in lockdown, uh, any company that had the ability to go remote with their employees did so
Mm-hmm.
in order to
Yep.
survive.
Mm-hmm.
And my prediction is that as we come out of lockdown and companies reevaluate the real estate that they have in the form of office space, and they realize that perhaps it's not uh, financially necessary
Mm-hmm.
to have this office space, and so I think that there's going to be a huge surge in the number of people who going forward will have remote jobs,
Mm-hmm.
that the jobs will stay remote. And when your job is remote, now you have the ability to work from anywhere in the world.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the number of people who will actually sell everything and truly go nomadic the way I did will be fairly small. But the number of people who will take, as a colleague of mine refers to it, workations,
Mm-hmm.
where you can go away for a few months at a time and you
Mm-hmm.
work while you're traveling, while you were away at the destination. So this what he does is he, with his wife and daughter, they will go away for 1 to 3 months at a time, and they do that 2 to 3 times a year. And they go
Mm-hmm.
to one destination, they stay in that destination for 1 to 3 months, and then they come home
Mm-hmm.
again. So the number of people who will be able to embrace some long-term travel opportunities by virtue of now having the ability to work remotely, I believe is going to go up exponentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All we have to do ultimately is just wait until, well, we have to wait for a few things to happen first, but not the least of which is we have to wait for borders to reopen and travel to be safe again.
Yep, yep. Yeah, so I guess you haven't traveled since the pandemic started, right? Did it make you feel itchy to like just go somewhere? But I think a lot of people are feeling itchy to go traveling somewhere now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely. I have been exploring some very local trips, and some, just in my area. I've done a couple of little things, um, and I'm hoping to go away for the winter for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is my boyfriend is American, and so we've been separated since March.
Mm-hmm.
And the Canadian border is probably not going to open, so we're hoping that we will be able to meet somewhere for the winter where we
Mm-hmm.
can spend the winter abroad. But that'll depend on where Americans are allowed to go at that time, which at the moment is a moving target. So we're not
Yeah.
making any hard and fast plans right now. But yeah, I'll be ready to go when we can go again for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so quick questions. Like, okay, you've stayed all over the world pretty much, right?
Yep.
Okay. So which is the cheapest and which is the most expensive? And then like if someone has to budget, like just say like, I guess if they're fairly frugal, whatever, like not like cheap, like place, but like still living comfortably, like how much is their budget? Because like I know in Asian countries, I think it's very easy, right? In Thailand, like when I was researching, like you can live easy in $1,000 a month, right? And that includes accommodation. So like what is typically the budget between like different countries? I guess in Asia is cheaper, so maybe in like Australia, Europe is more expensive. Just like a rough idea, like how much would that cost someone?
So I think what you touched upon it there, and I don't even think you realized it. It has a lot more to do with the currency that you are working with than it
Mm-hmm.
has to do with the cost of living in the country itself.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the currency what currency are you earning money in? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were earning money in Malaysian ringgit, then there would be a lot of countries that would be really expensive.
Yep, yep.
If I were earning euros or US dollars, then there's a lot more countries that I can go to by virtue of playing the currency arbitrage game. So obviously, a
Mm-hmm.
US dollar goes a lot farther in
Yep.
Thailand than it does in other countries, than it
Mm-hmm.
does even in the States. So
Mm-hmm.
cheap is again subjective, and also, I wrote a post about this on my website as well, because when people ask me for budgets, I usually won't give them because,
Mm.
again, there's a huge range. What are your standards for
Yeah.
accommodation?
Yep,
Where are
yep.
you willing to stay? What are you willing to put up
Mm-hmm.
with?
Mm-hmm.
What are your needs? What are your so it's some people might say, oh, I would never stay in this place. Well, suddenly, okay, well then that means you're going to have to spend a little bit more, even though it's a cheap country.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, yes, absolutely. Southeast Asia is fairly inexpensive. I can't even say that Indonesia is inexpensive because, yeah, certain parts of Bali are inexpensive. But if you're going to a remote island in northern Indonesia, no, it could actually be very expensive, even though it's in what you think is a cheap country. So it really, really depends. When you're creating a travel budget, you have to look at what it is you plan on doing,
Mm-hmm.
and why you're going to a destination before you can even start to figure out how much money you're going to spend there. Having
Mm-hmm.
said that, there are lots of websites out there that help you estimate the cost of living in a
Mm-hmm.
country. And there's trying to think of a couple off the top of my head. I think one of them is called Budget Your Trip.
Okay.
Um, Again, an article on my website that is about creating a long-term travel budget, and I list a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
resources for where you
Okay.
can find cost of
Mm-hmm.
livings
Got it. So how
costs
often
of
do
living.
you how often do you write blogs? Is it weekly,
It varies.
daily?
It
Okay.
varies
Mhm.
twice a month at the moment.
Okay.
Sometimes a little bit more, but I'm
Mhm.
also active on, I create videos. I'm active on multiple platforms, and I'm in the process right now of launching a podcast, which will go live next week, called the
Mhm.
League of Extraordinary Travelers. I'm co-hosting it with Gary Arndt, who is also a very, very long-term
Mhm.
traveler.
Nice.
And yeah, we have a Facebook group of the same name called the League of Extraordinary Travelers. So you can find us there.
Awesome.
And the
Okay.
reason you want to find us there is we're making it an interactive element to the podcast. So you can actually
Awesome.
interact with us
Mhm.
and interact with the podcast through the Facebook group.
Awesome. So what's next for Nora right now? Because yeah. So what's next for you?
The podcast really is
Okay.
has been
Mhm.
a lot of
Yep. Yep.
my time and energy.
Mhm.
I had started writing a memoir,
Mhm.
and I got like 120,000 words in before I actually had to stop the project for a while.
Mhm.
Anyone who's ever tried to write a memoir probably knows what
Yeah.
I'm talking about when I
Mhm.
say I was knocked around by my book. So I
Mhm.
had to shelve it, but one of these days I'll get back into it.
Yeah.
And if and when travel resumes,
Mhm.
there was I had a pretty burgeoning speaking career that was,
Mhm.
I mean, I was traveling around the world speaking at conferences
Wow.
that
Nice.
had that obviously stopped with the pandemic, and
Mhm.
it remains to be seen to what extent that's or when that's ever going
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
recover.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm just trying to take it easy a little bit as well.
Mhm.
It's a full-time job to keep my
Yeah.
website alive and all the
Mhm.
various ventures along with that. So
Mhm.
I keep busy, and I'm enjoying home. Although I'm also ready to hit the road.
Yeah, yeah. You sound like a very busy lady. I love like what you do. So what services do you offer now? And then like how can people find you?
So the best place for people to find me is at theprofessionalhobo.com. That is my online home. You'll find my email address on the contact page there if you want to reach me directly. I'm also on Facebook, The Professional Hobo, Twitter, Hobo Nora. And if you, I have a YouTube channel as well. If you search for
Oh,
Nora Dunn, you'll
okay.
find me there.
Awesome. Are you also on LinkedIn?
Of course I am.
You forgot to mention that. Okay.
I thought that was a given. I think I'm tagged in here somewhere. So, and I
Well,
love LinkedIn.
not all my guests are active on LinkedIn actually.
Ah, okay. And you know what?
Yeah.
LinkedIn is fabulous. It's so
Yeah.
it's kind of like the it's not that it's undiscovered, but it really is a fabulous way to network,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
especially to network with business minded people. So
Hmm.
there's tons of opportunities on LinkedIn. So I enjoy. I'm on it almost every day.
Are you on Instagram as well?
Nope.
Oh, why not? You have
I've
pictures
been
to show.
Yeah, I've been informally boycotting Instagram for the last 3 years.
Oh.
It's just, listen, I've got all kinds of kind of like ethical reasons why I don't get onto it, but the actual reason is I just don't have enough time, and I
Yeah.
don't have. There's not enough ROI for me in terms
Yeah.
of the time that I
Yeah.
spend there. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I
I've
have to
been
pick my
kind of
battles.
I know, I know. I was like, I grow so much on LinkedIn. I'm like, I want to grow on Instagram. It's like, I don't see much ROI there too, but I'm still trying. I haven't given up yet, but I'm just kind of repurposing my content. So I don't know yet when I'm going to say, okay, maybe this is not the platform for me. So we'll see. All
Well,
right.
good
So,
luck in the meantime.
all right, Nora. So this is so much fun. I enjoy learning so much about you. And then, yeah, I'm going to check out I'm going to read the articles on your website. That sounds like you have a lot of information. And then I'm going to check out this Gigi Griffiths you're talking about. And then, so for anyone, I'm going to also convert this to a podcast so people can listen. I also have a podcast on iTunes. So in case, they can watch this, then they can prefer to listen. So I really appreciate your time, Nora. So thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
Bye bye.
Have a great day.